What I actually think a lot of clients want, they don't want us to go back to bare earth and understand everything about your brand. They're like, yeah, just can you fix it, please?
Customer experience wisdom, a dash of travel talk. We've been cleared for takeoff.
The best meals are served outside and require a passport.
Welcome to the Departure Lounge, CX Passport listeners. Thank you again for your continued support of our CX Open to Work series. It really is great to see how this community has rallied around each other to help everyone advance to that next great stage in their customer experience career. Today, we welcome David Balko, an executive from the Greater London area with experience across digital, creative, and technology sectors. David has spent over 2 decades enhancing business growth, leading teams, and solving complex problems at companies like Tribal Worldwide London. With a background in driving strategic solutions and engaging with C-level executives, David understands market pressures and the innovation required to solve those market pressures. His expertise extends to public speaking, particularly on topics like mobile marketing and connected device strategies. David brings to us an origin story that starts at age 14 with campaign magazine inspiration and later observations that buying a car is akin to Wimbledon. I'm intrigued by what David has to tell us today. David, welcome to CX Passport.
Well, thanks, Rick. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it's really good to be here, and thank you for the invite. I'm really looking forward to the next half an hour.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And we were lamenting, listeners, David and I, before how, not lamenting, we were celebrating how it's starting to warm up. So we're recording this in early May. Things are getting a little nicer out there. Yeah. Although we did have a little compare and contrast between what warming up means to me in Dallas, Texas, and what warming up means to David in the Greater London area.
Yeah, it's a little bit different here, but it's wonderful. Everything's green. Everyone's feeling bright. There's a lot of optimism. And, we've come out of that really wet winter that we've had here in the UK. So it's great.
That is great. It is nice. The smiles and the greens for sure. Well, David, we're talking about customer experience, and I'm curious, what is it? What drew you and what draws you to customer experience? Why is it important to you?
Well, I think so. I started my career in above the line advertising, and I started at Ogilvy and Mather, and David Ogilvy famously kind of said, "You can only convince someone to buy a bad product once." And I think when you overlay customer experience onto that, you can fail in many areas, not just with the product. And so for me, that whole experience, what you have during the buying process, what you have during the learning process, the excitement process, and the delivery, and the product, and everything else that goes beyond that, to me is encapsulates the whole of the brand and that experience. And so over the years, what started for me is, let's make some ads, let's do some advertising and so on. It's rapidly extended into the wider piece, which is, the whole. And that for me is where the excitement happens, because it's often a way to excite and delight and deliver people to the product much more engaged, excited, happier, whatever it might be. That can ultimately, and this is the other part that really excites me, deliver sales. We're not here just for fun. Yes. We want to kind of improve a client's bottom line, a customer's bottom line.
You, if you're watching this, people would have seen it. If not, just let me promise you, audio listeners, that I grinned from ear to ear. And those of you that have been consistent listeners to CX Passport know how important that sales part of it, the revenue, the results part of it is so important. I like that quote that you mentioned. You can only sell a bad product once. And I may have completely misquoted it there.
Yeah.
You started to bring that into experience. Tell me a little bit more about your thoughts around that. And when it comes to experience, is it, hey, you only get one shot to give a bad experience, or what are your thoughts around that?
I think so. I think consumers are more forgiving in the sense that I think when particularly in retail or in fashion, we're prepared to jump through a few more hoops, because usually we want the thing. So we're prepared to kind of go, well, that's a bit of a rubbish kind of, checkout experience, or I can't find it in the browser experience, doesn't work properly on my phone, or whatever it is, because we're kind of already there. But I think those things are being ironed out and clearly have been over the last kind of 5 or 10 years as things have improved. But so I think that consumers do want better experiences, and we are more forgiving. But for me, that's not an excuse. And so all brands have to think about that and think about those kind of moments where, do you know what, if 5 in 100 people kind of go, oh, I can't be bothered, I don't want it that badly, that could be the difference between profit and loss.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport, leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah. And now you're tying it to business results, which is so valuable. I also think that there's been companies, this is sort of a yes and. There are companies that think, yeah, I've got a great product. It's an awesome product. It's a fantastic product. Everybody would want my product forever and ever. Amen. Well, no, consumer tastes are fickle and they change. And if you are solely relying on product's important, but if you're solely relying on that's and still deliver a bad experience, your customers are going to leave. Let's talk 100%. About that. How have you created an experience that your customers wanted in the past?
Yeah, so I spent the last 8 years working at Tribal, and one of our largest clients was Volkswagen, and the customer experience and the journey that people go on when they buy an automobile is long, truncated. We kind of called it, it was full of loops and leaps. There are these moments, usually when you kind of take delivery of your brand new car, that you start to think about, the next one. And that might be 3, 4, 5 years down the line. But, we're all constantly looking around, hearing what our friends say, so those loops and leaps take place over time. Well, I spent a lot of time looking at that journey with the team at Tribal and looking at ways that we can enhance that experience, both digitally, physically in the showroom, and post delivery in the car, and all of those connected points in between, because we knew that there were certain pressure points where customers, as I was just saying earlier, either post purchase kind of had 20 questions that you only really find out when you've taken delivery of your new car and you've driven it for a bit, and you then want to go back to the dealership or go back to the brand and say, how does that work? Can I adjust my mirror when I turn my key off? All those kinds of things. And they were often being let down. And so what we were doing was looking at those points and saying, well, how do we improve that through clever use of CRM, clever use of applications, clever use of a phone call, whatever it might be? Because actually, when all of those are joined together, what we found at the beginning of the journey was when we joined up all the technology really well, customers basically traded up a trim. So we knew that when all that technology was in, and again, going back to the bottom line, I only care about improvements for our customers. Now that can be, it's usually financial because that's kind of what they're trying to do. But at the same time, it can be brand experience, it can be appreciation, all of those things. But when we joined them up and when customers use all of the tools, they went up a trim. That's valuable to an automotive manufacturer.
Yeah, well, as someone who has gone up a trim level or two from time to time, I know how valuable it is because I felt the value coming out of me into the automaker.
Yeah, right. Yes, indeed. But actually, what we did, we used a lot of data to understand how the cars were being produced on the factory, and then we started to say, well, how can we start having conversations with clients about upsell during the process, in a way, either post-order, before delivery, and so on, where you can make those changes. And all of those start to turn marketing from a cost center into a profit center when done correctly. So that, for me, is, again, the heart of why I do what I do, because you have to look at that entirety.
I intend to come back, and I want to spend a little more time talking to you about customer experience and business results. But I want to go back to something that I mentioned in the introduction. You talked about buying a car is akin to Wimbledon. Help me understand what you mean by that.
So winning Wimbledon, the tennis tournament, winning Wimbledon and any of the Grand Slams is really easy. You just have to win 7 games in a row. Right. Okay. Now, it's simple, right? You know, when you look at it like that, just win 7.
It's a very simple process.
Along the way, you might have to beat Rafa Nadal, you know, Serena Williams, anyone along those lines. But it's really straightforward. And often, you know, you start with a draw of 128 players. Well, it's a bit like buying a car. We think of all of those brands at the beginning of the journey. And we think about, hey, you know, let's buy a Chrysler or let's buy a Volkswagen or let's buy whatever. And gradually you sift out that those brands fall out in the early rounds 1, 2, 3, 4. And my view is that you can only win Wimbledon if you're in the final. And being in the final is exactly like buying a car. Most customers, on average, test drive 2.4 cars. So 2. Right. And so they go and test drive those cars. That's your final. So we have to, my job was always to deliver customers rationally convinced and emotionally excited to the dealership. Because at that point, you have to hand over to the services, the humans, that experience. And we spent a lot of time working with the brands on that experience. But that was the moment. That's the final. That's the part where we want people to kind of go, I want that one. And that's when you win. As a brand, that's when you win.
I like that. There's a lot to enjoy in there. One, just it's very simple to win Wimbledon. Put on that on your T-shirt quote. Right. Absolutely. But it does make sense when you're talking about it. And the point of get to the final. And I especially appreciate there's a whole conversation we could have around how customer experience is so much more than what some people pigeonhole it in their minds, and that idea of you're handing it over, and how does that all work together? The work that you were doing up here was a part of the experience. The work that the dealership is doing is part of the experience. The post-sale, all of that is the customer's experience when it comes to buying a car in this example.
So we wanted dealers to understand. So when when customers sit watching television and they see an ad, and they might in the UK, we're quite digitally literate in that sense. So second screening is we're really good at it compared to other European countries. We do it a lot. So people have their laptops, their phones, their tablets, and they go onto car websites and they build cars. They go onto those onto the configurators and do that. Well, that's data. We can start to use that. When you book a test drive, why don't we send all that data to the dealership, so that we know that person wanted to buy a Golf, they really liked the red, they kept looking at the stereo upgrades, all of these things. So we send those, not just the desired configuration, but the searched configurations. So that helps. Just it's those little pieces of information and that currency that dealers can use and brands can use to help give their customers a better experience and give them what they want. You know, and a basic one was, you know, if you want to drive a Golf GTI and test drive one, well, try and make sure there's a Golf GTI to test drive rather than a base level, right?
Right.
You know, really simple stuff like that. Now, it's hard. That's easy for me to say. It's really hard for brands to deliver. But we know that when those things work, people get great experiences and they're more likely to buy.
Yeah. And that is, I chuckle, you're right. Cause having inventory, we're not talking about, you know, a bag of chips here, right? It is having the right trim on a lot. I certainly get the complexity, but at least knowing that that's an objective allows a company to start the process and execution towards going that direction.
Yeah. But you know what? In retail, it's exactly the same. In fashion, how many times have we walked into a store thinking that we want to buy a pair of jeans or a pair of shoes, and they don't have it in our size? This is where stock checks are really great. You know, only today I knew I had to go and buy something for my daughter. I knew they had it in stock. I was in and out very quickly. Now, the shop that I went into might have wanted me to dwell a bit more, might have wanted me to buy some other things. I went, great. I've had a wonderful experience here. I'm in, I'm out in 30 seconds. You have what I want. I feel good about that, and I'm more likely to go back in the future.
Yeah.
So it can work on a $5.99 kind of pair of trousers as much as it can on a 25, 30, 40, 100,000 pound car.
Very true. I'm wearing a pair of pants right now that was part of that BOPUS, the buy online, purchase in store.
Totally
and because of it being so easy, I'm going to get like 4 or 5 more pairs because I like
You're
these
going to
pants.
go there again. And then you can order online, and then they know about you. And all that data is important to me.
Well, I want to do a little twist because we've been talking about how the delivery customer experience affects business results. Pretty clear and simple. Well, why is that not so clear to some companies? Why are we seeing companies sort of back away from the label customer experience and the work of customer experience if folks like you and me know and have direct line between customer experience and financial results?
I think it's a good question. I think lots of agencies and business, certainly the agency world that I come from, there's a lot of conversations where agencies purport to understand the commercial aspects. I think, if I'm being slightly negative, I think a lot of them think they do, but have no idea. And actually, for me, curiosity, it's all about curiosity.
Yeah.
Again, go back to the kind of my early Ogilvy and TBWA training. Just try and understand how your clients make money. Try and understand what their pressures are. I remember years ago, similarly working on Nissan, and we were doing an ad for a Nissan Micra, which is a tiny little car in the UK. It's not even sold in the USA. And, we were arguing over something or other. And the client just said to me, look, David, he just sighed one day and he said, look, David, we designed these cars a year ago. They're on a boat. They're about 6 weeks away from the UK. There's 865 of them. They come in 2 colours. They come with all of the trim that we all know about. I just need to sell them. Please give me an ad that does that, and we will take care of the rest. Now, customer experience will do all of those things, but I really understood that at that moment, where you just have to understand the client's pressures. We were sort of thinking, oh, well, it might change. No, it's too late. The cars are on their way. Just sell them. And so there was to me, it's that curiosity of understanding how they make them, why they make whatever they do, and how can we, frankly, not get in the way. Let's just kind of help things get better.
David, I really like that. I like that, especially understanding the commercial reality of what it is the product. Hey, it's locked in, man. Just give me an ad that'll sell.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about those cars being on a boat and on their way over. And I used to actually work in international supply chain and that sort of stuff, so I can visualize some of those big old boats going through the Suez Canal. Actually. Thankfully, when you and I are traveling the globe, we are not having to do that. And yet it's still quite a big distance. It can be nice to stop down in the lounge, take a little break. And that's what I want to do with you here right now. Let's stop down in the first class lounge, take a little break, have a little bit of fun here. What is a dream travel location from your past?
So you've got to let me have 2. The first is Venice. I love Venice. Venice, to me, I would happily go and live there tomorrow. And I don't really care that it's sinking. That's my daughter's problem.
Right.
I buy a house, I live there. I love the quietness. I love the fact that it hasn't changed. I love the fact that when you arrive, it's the same view that Marco Polo saw in the 14th century, and it's just great. And the second is Los Angeles, which is a kind of complete different part of the world. But I love LA, and my grandfather lived there, and I spent much of my childhood there. And I think it's one of the most vibrant and exciting and amazing cities. And California in general, you can get out of LA and get to the mountains and get to the desert and get to the coast. And it's, I love it.
That's what I love about having this podcast be a global podcast with global guests, because if it were just U.S. folks, I don't think there'd be a lot of folks that would name L.A. as the dream travel location for their past. But it's so eye-opening. It's eye-opening to have the perspective of someone that isn't sitting here in the States and say, no, that's a great place. Now, I'm 1,000% with you on Venice. The brilliance of Venice is, yes, you can be in the most just crowded, overly tourist street, but if you just wander one block over where no one else is,
So good.
It is
So good.
delightful and quiet. You're right.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
When I saw here's a customer. Here's a CX problem, right?
Okay.
So I saw a refrigerator being delivered in Venice. Now this is complex.
Oh, yeah.
It's on a boat with a crane. It goes in through a window, and there are many opportunities for failure. And when you see how cities solve those kind of CX problems that we sort of forget about, it's great, and it's a wonderful moment. I kind of sat and watched this fridge go into this house.
I would not have thought of that in the context of customer experience. I like that. Yeah, that's great. Well, let's go forward. What's a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
Costa Rica. I really want to go to Costa Rica. A bunch of friends have been. It's a country that has embraced tourism in a very ecologically minded way.
Yes.
It's very progressive in the region. What's not to like? I'd love to go.
Love Costa Rica. +1 for Costa Rica. Brilliant place to be. Wonderful, wonderful country. Beautiful. And some good food, which is a key part of that. So what is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
So anyone that knows me and anyone that listens will know that I love Indian food. I love a curry. And so the best curry I ever ate was in India. But because of the Indian population in the UK, once a month, it's a wonderful treat.
That's awesome. Oh, I like that. Well, going the other way, what is something growing up you were forced to eat, but you hated as a kid?
Rice pudding. My mother, I hate the idea. Rice is great, right? Rice is wonderful. There's nothing wrong with rice as a savoury dish. Rice as a dessert fills me with dread. I even feel slightly nauseous talking about it.
Yeah. Man, I love this question because yours may be the first dessert that's ever been mentioned.
Okay.
in the things forced to eat as a kid. I like that. Well, we're going to have to get back on the road here, David. Yeah. So what is one travel item, not including your phone or your passport, that you will not leave home without?
It's easy. It's a pen and a piece of paper. Again, it's an obvious answer, but there's those moments where we all take notes on our phone. We all take notes on we've got technology that can do these things. But there's nothing better occasionally than a piece of paper sketching something out, and it just works.
David, I really like that answer. And it's not as obvious. Like you said, it's obvious. Not really. Some folks have just kind of abandoned that. But I've got you can't see it on screen. I've got my yellow legal pad right here. Yeah. And that's where my most creative thought. The phone is convenient. I can't carry a legal pad when I'm on a run. But when I'm trying to be creative, I need that tangibility of brain to finger to paper for sure.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to CX a bit. What are companies what have you seen is just missing in customer experience today, and how can they improve on that?
So airlines, I think, that it's a really tricky one. I get, again, going back to the commercial pressures, airlines are under enormous commercial pressure. The cost of fuel, is the biggest factor, I guess, cost of equipment, all of those things. But the dreadful customer experience that exists, I think particularly in Europe with some of our low-cost airlines, some get it right, some are better, but I think there is so much opportunity to make a journey so much more pleasurable without adding costs. It's just little things that I think can make the difference. Technology is making a big difference, but I get the fact that the airline, the airport, the car parking, the transport to the airport, they're all different,
right?
And they're all but when it goes well and when brands get it right, God, it's good. But there's so much room for error, and most airlines don't get it right, and let alone the experience on board. The experience, the technology. I worked for many years with a brand called Panasonic Avionics. looking at how customers can have better experiences with tech on aircraft. It's great. There's great opportunities. There are great opportunities there. Notwithstanding seats and all of that stuff. But I just think it's got worse I was lucky enough to fly on Concorde many years ago, which was tiny, really cramped, lovely champagne, lovely food, but got you to New York in 3.5 hours. We've gone backwards, right? We really have. So I think there's a lot to be said for an improved experience in that sector.
Well, I'm gonna push you a little bit on that, but first I'm gonna say I missed out on the Concorde. And I've always wanted to have that experience, and I have this hope that before my traveling days have come to an end, that I will experience some sort of supersonic version of flight, because the thought of 3 hours between those cities was just delightful.
Do you know? And it's fascinating. Every 6 months, we see an article in the press that says, there's an aircraft coming. We'll get to Sydney in 3 minutes, or whatever it is, and I've been reading these articles for, I don't know, 25, 30 years. It's complete rubbish. And I'm just like, you go then, please. I want it. Where do I sign?
Hey,
so
look,
aircraft manufacturers, this is my plea. Please crack on, please.
Look, you're talking to a guy that lives in a country we barely have any sort of rail system to speak of, and hardly any what we call high speed wouldn't even really qualify. So having spent some time in Japan a little while ago, there's a lot of improvement that can go around in the travel space. So this is where I'm going to push you a little bit, David. So if that's what's missing, and whether we want to talk about the airline specifically, how can you help companies improve customer experience in the ways they're falling short now?
Yeah. So for me, one of my bugbears with the CX industry is, and it's slightly controversial, and some of my CX mates will have heard me say this, and they'll get annoyed. But I think one of the things that we do badly in CX is we often go back to square one. So we're really good at going, right, so we now need to unpick everything about that experience, and we need to understand everything about it, and so on. And I kind of go, well, hang on a minute. You've got 3 people in the room, each with 25 years worth of experience. Why don't we use some of that as well, right? Because often it isn't about going back to kind of bare earth and building it from scratch. It's often about just applying smart amounts of common sense. So to your question, I think, the industries that really can do well, rail is an interesting one. Now, it's very complicated in North America, I get that. But in Europe, rail is really opening up again. And I've read an article recently about the Italian railways opening up something like 750 or 800 kilometers worth of old railways to attract people out of Venice, to attract people out of Rome, so that they can go and visit a gorgeous country in Italy. And so my view is that is a wonderful way. That's big CX, that, in my view. That's a wonderful way of thinking. We've got some old trains here. We've got some old track. We've got lots of people that want to see our country. Hang on, light bulb moment. Let's do something really good with that. Well, I think that's a great way of starting to. It's a national CX project. So I think that's a good thing. And I think, again, a big opportunity in Europe would be joining all of those rail networks up, which is coming. And I think that would be great. And for me, I just want to apply. Many years ago, a really famous old strategic planner said to me, I asked him a question: how do you solve these briefs? How do you do that? How do you think so beautifully? And he said, look, David, it's simple. I've got 2 filing cabinets. One is full of the work that I've done, and one is full of the work and of how we got there and the problems that we solved. And I just go and rummage around in both of those. And usually there is an answer that solves the problem that it's in front of me. And I think that's what I bring to solving problems. I've got 27, 28 years of working on every kind of conceivable sector. And most of the problems that I've seen often can be related. I can relate to something else, and therefore we can kind of get to the answer quickly, which is what I actually think a lot of clients want. They don't want us to go back to bare earth and understand everything about your brand. They're like, yeah, just can you fix it, please? Move on.
I like that. We'll keep it PG here, or G. We'll get stuff done.
Yeah,
that approach to it. I had a job title of that actually back at a former employee where I created the team. It was just called the Getting Done team.
Get it done. Get it done.
And that approach to this, I agree. There's a lot of I actually agree with you. There is too much overhead in customer experience that actually is distancing us and actually kind of repelling our target customer. I'm just talking like the people we work with inside, say, the companies or our clients. It's repelling them. They look at it as sort of fluff rather than no. Here's actually the quick ways we can get to your tangible business value.
Totally right.
And moving forward. Well, David, we're kind of coming near the end of our time together here. Unfortunately, I could tell I mentioned there's a few other threads that I like to pull at, but we're out of time here. I'm curious though, what's next for you with customer experience? Where do you want to be next?
Well, I think you just touched on it, actually, Rick. For me, the application of AI is having a tremendous effect on agencies. I read somewhere someone was saying no one's really thought about what AI is going to do to the billable hour. And I think that's really, really key to successful agencies and running a successful team and so on. And of course, the great use of AI and great use of technology when married to a problem will often solve 80% of the heavy lifting in 20% of the time. So instead of, hey, look, we'll disappear off for 2, 3, 4 weeks and we're going to go and think about something, we might be able to do that in 2, 3, 4 days. Well, we've still got to pay people quite a lot of money for their salaries. How do we do that? Well, I think the smart use of application of AI means you can do more. So that's the first thing. Instead of working on one client, you might be able to work on 2, 3, or 4. Well, that's good. But using AI to improve customer experiences with better comms that are targeted correctly, that map back to what the product is that's in the warehouse so that we don't disappoint people, and then measuring all of that and tying it all together in a way that allows clients and their paymasters and their senior folks to interrogate it quickly, I think is really important.
I like that. I think that'll be a very interesting. I'm going to enjoy watching you move forward in those next steps in your next CX move. David, if folks want to get to know you, get to know a little bit more about your views on customer experience or heck, just life in general, what's the best way for folks to get in touch with you?
So LinkedIn is great. If you're in the UK, hit me up. I'm in London 3 days a week. And you know, I again, in true good CX, I like to meet face to face. It's always good. You know, I think it's always a nice way to kind of get to know each other a bit better. But yeah, LinkedIn is always the way forward.
Will do. And I will, as everyone knows, scroll down in the show notes. Right there will be the link to David's profile. David, I enjoyed this today. I did not expect us to find out that a dessert was the treat that was the one that tortured you as a child. I did, however, in all seriousness, I thought our discussion around customer experience and the push to tangible business value across all the dimensions are vital. And now I know that, hey, I can win Wimbledon. I just need to win 7 games. That's all I need.
It's easy.
It's easy. Awesome. David, it was wonderful talking to you today. David, thank you for being on CX Passport.
Thank you, Rick. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.